The real reason Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus for exactly 30 pieces of silver. What if the most famous transaction in human history wasn't about greed at all? A leather pouch hits a stone table in Jerusalem with a cold, metallic clink. 30 silver coins spill across the wood, reflecting the dim flame of an oil lamp. To most people, this is the ultimate story of human betrayal driven by cheap bribery. We hear 30 pieces of silver and assume Judas was simply looking for a quick payout. But when you look at first-century economics and ancient Levitical law, a striking paradox emerges. 30 silver pieces was not a fortune. It wasn't life-changing wealth. In fact, it was an insultingly specific legal valuation. Why 30? Why not 50? Why not 100? The answer takes us back centuries before the upper room to a forgotten law in Exodus, a bizarre prophetic action in Zechariah, and a cold, calculated insult staged by the Sanhedrin. The 30 pieces of silver were never meant to be a bribe. They were a statement, a legal appraisal, a deliberate attempt by religious leaders to place a specific price tag on the Son of God. Most people read the story of Judas and focus only on his betrayal in the Garden of Gethsemane. But if you step back and look at the cultural and textual blueprint, you realize every single coin was part of an ancient script written centuries before Judas was even born. To understand what really happened in that room, you have to look at what 30 shekels of silver actually meant in the ancient world. In the 1st century, the coins handed to Judas were almost certainly Tyrian shekels, high-purity silver coins minted in Tyre, used specifically to pay the annual temple tax in Jerusalem because of their reliable metal quality. Economically, 30 Tyrian shekels equaled about 4 months of standard wages for a common laborer. It was enough money to buy a small patch of poor land, but nowhere near enough to retire on or build a comfortable life. If Judas was driven purely by greed, why would he betray a leader who performed miracles and commanded crowds for a sum he could have earned in a single summer of hard labor? The answer lies in the ancient law of Moses. In Exodus chapter 21, verse 32, God gives Israel a list of legal civil damages. The text states that if an ox accidentally gores a male or female slave to death, the owner of the ox must pay a specific fine to the slave's master. If the ox gores a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Think about that for a second. 30 shekels of silver was the statutory legal value of a damaged, dead slave. It was the lowest legal restitution in the entire Levitical code. When the chief priests counted out 30 coins to Judas, they weren't bargaining with a greedy traitor. They were executing a legal maneuver. They were saying, "This is what your teacher is worth to us, the value of a dead slave." But the story gets deeper. Centuries before Christ walked the streets of Jerusalem, the prophet Zechariah acted out a dramatic prophetic parable recorded in Zechariah chapter 11. God commanded Zechariah to act as a shepherd to a flock destined for slaughter. Zechariah shepherded the people faithfully, but the leaders rejected his leadership, so Zechariah broke his staff and asked the leaders for his wages. Zechariah 11:12 says, "Then I said to them, if it seems good to you, give me my wages, but if not, keep them." So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. The leaders of Israel handed the prophet 30 pieces of silver as an insult, a mock payment, saying his shepherd's care was worth nothing more than a slave's compensation. And notice what God tells Zechariah to do next in verse 13. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that princely price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Look at the language. God himself calls 30 pieces of silver a princely price, sarcastically calling out the insult of being valued so low. And he commands the prophet to throw the silver into the house of the Lord, specifically for a potter. Fast forward 500 years to the night before the crucifixion. Judas walks into the temple, meets with the Sanhedrin, and accepts the exact same payment, 30 pieces of silver. Judas takes the money, leads the soldiers to Gethsemane, and identifies Jesus with a kiss. But the moment Jesus is condemned to death, something inside Judas breaks. Matthew chapter 27 tells us that Judas was seized with remorse. He realized Jesus was actually going to be executed, not establishing an earthly kingdom like Judas had hoped. He walks back into the temple court, holds out the 30 silver coins to the chief priests, and says, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And look at the cold response of the religious leaders. What is that to us? You see to it. Desperate, overwhelmed with guilt, Judas hurls the 30 pieces of silver onto the sanctuary floor of the temple and flees into the night, where he ends his own life. Now watch what the chief priests do next. They pick up the silver coins off the holy floor, but they face a legal dilemma. Deuteronomy law forbade putting blood money into the sacred temple treasury. So what do they do with the 30 coins? Matthew 27:7 tells us, and they consulted together and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Do you see how every piece of the ancient puzzle snapped together? The 30 pieces of silver, the legal price of a slave from Exodus, were handed over in the temple, thrown down in the house of the Lord, refused by the treasury, and used to buy a potter's field. Zechariah's prophecy was fulfilled down to the exact location, the exact item, the exact amount, and the exact person involved, the potter. Think about a master jeweler inspecting a flawless, priceless diamond. A dishonest appraiser takes the gem, puts it on a scale, and intentionally declares it to be cheap, common glass, offering a few pennies for it. The Sanhedrin attempted to give Jesus a counterfeit appraisal. They tried to fix his value at 30 pieces of silver, the price of a servant. But the cross turned their insult completely upside down. What human religious leaders valued as 30 coins of silver, God valued as the infinite, priceless blood of the new covenant. The tragedy of Judas isn't just that he sold Jesus, it's that he drastically undervalued who Jesus was. He traded an eternal relationship for a temporary handful of silver that he couldn't even keep for 24 hours. The story of the 30 pieces of silver leaves us with an inescapable question that reaches straight into our modern world. What value do we place on Christ today? Do we trade our convictions for short-term security, political convenience, or social approval? Or do we recognize that the one valued as a slave gave his life to make us sons and daughters of God? If this textual breakdown opened your eyes to the incredible unity of Scripture, take a second to support our channel. Subscribe, drop a comment below. Even a single word helps others find this message, and share this video with someone who loves digging deeper into the Word. Thank you for watching. Please keep us in your prayers.